to our next speaker, someone Mikita was very excited about. Our one and only lawyer. Having a lawyer when buying property and building in Ghana is crucial for several reasons. Verification of ownership, drafting and reviewing contracts, resolving land disputes, navigating land systems, minimizing risk in building projects, title registration, avoiding scams and litigation. And I feel that is very important, especially the scams and litigations, especially when it comes to individuals that are in the diaspora. Very important to have a lawyer involved in every step of the way. So now I am coming to introduce our very own Emmanuel Adaare. And Emmanuel Adaare is an associate lawyer at Adaare and Associates. Emmanuel Adaare Esquire is a distinguished barrister and solicitor at Adaare and Associates, specializing in land and labor law and courtroom practice. A graduate of Ghana Institute of Management and Public Administration in 2020. He completed his professional law course at the Ghana School of Law and was called to the bar in 2022. As a lawyer for the Supreme Court of Ghana, Emmanuel has cultivated expertise in land transactions and litigation, which forms a core aspect of his practice. He's also an editorial assistant at Yeni Publications, which publishes the Supreme Court Law Reports of Ghana. He holds an LLM in Information Technology Law and further expanding his capabilities in addressing legal complexities in the digital era. Over the years, Emmanuel has successfully handled numerous complex land transactions and court cases, earning him a growing reputation for excellence and commitment in the legal field. Hello and welcome, Emmanuel Adaare.
Hi, lady. Thank you. I said that introduction, that bio was a bit too much for me. I like to keep it simple, but thank you very much for that. And good evening to everyone, and thanks for joining. Within the next about 15, 20 minutes, I just want to take us through acquiring land in Ghana. Acquiring land in Ghana. There's a very big problem in Ghana, and that is as of the end of the 2023 legal year, the High Court of Ghana had received about 3,744 new land cases. That is fresh actions instituted at the High Court, 3,744 fresh actions. At the end of August 2023, so as of August 2023, there were 14,000, a little about 14,000 cases pending before the High Court of Ghana, which were based on land disputes. Okay, so land claims, about 14,000 land claims. The unfortunate thing is that resolution of these disputes is slow. So you have a resolution rate of about 16.23%. Resolution is pretty slow. What this means is that when you enter into any land transaction, if you have to go to court or if a dispute arises, it could take time for your dispute to be resolved. Resolution of the dispute is slow. So in acquiring land, one of our key focuses is to ensure that you acquire what we call good title. You have an indefeasible title in land, a superior claim which would bar any other claim, so that when any other person attempts to claim your land or says he has a claim or an interest in your property, the court would essentially overrule that interest or would determine that, in fact, your interest in the land or the land you have acquired is superior to the claim of any other person. So within the next 10, 15 minutes, we're just going to be looking at how we would acquire good title to land in Ghana. So we will start off with a quick definition of what land is. Land is the soil, anything attached or fixed to the soil, and anything above the airspace of the soil or underneath the soil. So the soil, everything beneath and everything above is what we mean by land. So when you acquire land in Ghana or you acquire an interest in land in Ghana, your land or your interest in the land will cover the soil, everything above and everything below, except where there are minerals underneath. If there are any minerals underneath, gold, diamond, whatever, any other mineral, that does not belong to you. You do not get the rights to those minerals, right? Please, the next slide. So land acquisition may be construed in two forms, right? In a strict sense and in a narrow sense. In a strict sense, it will refer to the acquisition of just the land, okay, or an interest in the land. But in a broad sense, we would also be talking about property acquisition. So sometimes you may not be buying just land, or you may not be taking vacant possession of land. You will be buying the land, or you'll be acquiring the land together with a building on it. That would be land acquisition in a broad sense, right? The next slide, please. So I would skip this slide. It basically talks about property and what property is, but we all know, I'm sure we all know what it is. So because of time, we just skip to the main thrust. So land acquisition in Ghana is actually done through conveyancing. Now, conveyancing concerns the legal mechanism by which land or an interest in land is transferred from one person to another. So if any person wants to acquire an interest in land, you would be looking at acquiring that interest through a conveyance, what we call a deed of conveyance, right? So for an acquisition to be valid, the person who is transferring the interest ought to have an interest in land. And it's pretty simple. It is that you cannot give to another person that which you do not have. So if someone asks you for $100, you cannot give out $100 if you do not have the $100. It's the same logic we apply in land transactions in Ghana. A person who does not have land cannot give you land. So at the foundation of any land acquisition is determining whether or not the person who is going to transfer the land to you, or the person who is selling the land to you, has an interest in the land or any interest in the land to give to you. This is actually captured in the Latin maxim, nemo dat code non habet. I put this in so that you know that, yeah, there's some legalese going on. But yeah, the point is that a person who does not have land cannot transfer the land to you, any land to you. The next slide. So the important thing to look at in land acquisition in Ghana, like I have said, at the very foundation, we would be asking questions of ownership. Now, who is an owner of land? Who is an owner of land? The owner of land, or when we talk about ownership, we would be talking about two primary elements, which is title and possession. Title and possession. So for us to say a person has ownership over land, then the person either has title or is in possession. But where the both elements are present, that is where both title and possession are present, then we would say ownership is perfected. Okay, ownership would be complete and you would acquire good title. The next slide, please. So in proven ownership, we would look at the two elements, title and possession. So title is basically the means by which a person would establish his rights to land. When we talk about title, we are essentially talking about some documentary evidence which will prove that any particular portion or parcel of land is owned by a particular person, okay? So when we are talking about title, we are talking about your claim to the land. And under Section 64 of the Land Act of Ghana, 2020, there are recognize ways by which a person can acquire good title. If you derive title through any of the following, then we would say you have derived good title. The first is one, by an enactment or an act of parliament. The second is by a grant, a vesting order, or a conveyance from the state. The third is where there has been a final judgment of a court of competent jurisdiction. Over here, I would be quick to add that in Ghana, there's an unfortunate practice where we could have two courts, right? Two high courts, both of the coordinate jurisdiction. That is, they both have the same powers. Two different courts both have the same power, and both courts will adjudicate over the same piece of land and come to different conclusions. So there would be competing or contradictory judgments by the two courts over the same piece of land. So A sues B in one court, right? A would sue B in one court, and A would be determined in the first court as the having better title to land. Okay. Then in the second court, C would have sued A. And in that second court, C will succeed in his claim, and C would be determined as having better title to land. What would happen then is that we have two decisions of the High Court, both of the High Courts. The Court 1, which said A had title to the land, and Court 2, which says C has title to the same piece of land. Where there's that disparity, or where there's that conflict between judgments of courts of coordinate jurisdiction, then your title cannot be said to be good title. But in all other instances, where there's a final judgment of a competent court or of a court of competent jurisdiction, then that would be a grounds for the acquisition of good title. The final point is where there's a grant or an acquisition under customary law or conveyance or an assignment or a mortgage of at least 30 years, then good title could be said to be established. So over here, we are just saying that where you are being granted land, or you have been granted land for a period of about 30 years, at least 30 years, you would have good title. Let's move on to the next point. The next slide, sorry. So other than title, what you would also need to prove is possession, right? Other than title, what you would also need to prove in proving ownership is possession. Now, possession in land refers to being in occupation. So a person who is in occupation of land or property is said to be in possession. That is the general possession. But to be in possession does not necessarily mean you as the individual have to be on the land. Nope. It could mean that you are exercising rights, possessory rights. So you could have your tenant on the land, and that suffices for your possession. You could have your agents, you could have anybody on the land, and that suffices for your possession. In fact, you could just plant trees, economic trees on the land, and that could be sufficient possession, sufficient to show that you have possession to prove ownership. Now, this is very important because the courts in Ghana will generally be looking at recent acts of possession to determine ownership. And it is very simple. The logic is not difficult to grasp. If you own property, it would flow from your ownership of the property that you would have control over the property. You would determine who can get onto the property, who can stay on the land, who can build, who can put up any structure, who can plant whatever trees. Basically, you would have the right to determine all of that. So to look at or to determine whether you own the land, we would be looking immensely, or would be looking a lot at what have you done to overtly show the world that this property actually belongs to you. This parcel of land actually belongs to you, right? So we'd say that possession is actually symbolic of ownership, and it's prima facie, or on the face, or generally any person observing would be led to believe that a person in possession of land is the owner of the land. You can juxtapose this to, or you can compare this with a situation where a person has a car, you have a car, or you drive a car. If you drive a car every single day, you are seen driving the same car. Everybody around you would naturally assume that this is your car. We would all be led to believe that you are the person who owns this car because we see you exercise acts of possession or, in quotes, acts of ownership over the car. It's literally the same thing. You own the property, you are always on the property, or you determine who has access to the property, who doesn't have access to the property. Those are all acts of possession, and that will count in determining whether a person is the owner of land. So for ownership to be complete, you would have to prove both title and possession. If you're able to prove title and possession, then we would say that your claim is perfect, okay? Or your title is perfect. And when you have perfect title, then your title would be superior to any claim. Any person coming to attack you or any adverse claim over the land will fail if you have perfect title, because perfect title means that you are the owner, undisputed owner, right? We can move on. Before we move on, or you can stay on the slide, but I think it's necessary to point out that so there are two things which we must take crucial notice of, especially if you want to invest in Ghana. The first is that there is no unowned land in Ghana. So every single piece and parcel of land in Ghana has an owner. There is no unowned land in Ghana. That's the first thing. And the second thing to take notice of is that the mere fact that land is bare or uninhabited or in a natural state in no way implies that there is no owner of the land, okay? So every single piece of land all across the territory of Ghana has an owner. And when you seek to acquire land, or if you seek to acquire land in Ghana, you would have to find the owner. And when we say the owner, we mean the true owner, that person who has good title and is in actual possession of the land, or is in possession of the land. So the acquisition of land in Ghana may be done. There's the unregistered land system and the registered land system. And the acquisition may be done either through a formal means or an informal means. Now, when we talk about the formal means, and please move with the slide. When we talk about the formal means, there would be a contract. Let's keep the unregistered and registered land system, and let's go to the acquisition, the formal and informal approaches, right? So when we talk about the formal means, we will be talking about where there is a contract, there's a prior written contract. And then when we talk about the informal means, there's no prior written contract. Over here, I'm going to slow down and take my time to explain this carefully because it's very, very important, right? So when we talk about the informal approach, right, we talk about the traditional approach. So it is more traditional. It is more conventional, more conservative. What it is, that's which has been practiced since time immemorial in Ghana, where when you want to buy land or when you seek to acquire land, what you will do is you will first consult one or two people, maybe your friends, and you will tell them that you seek to acquire land, right? Now, two things. You may know the land you want to acquire, or you may have identified what land it is you would want to acquire, or you may not have identified. Either ways, at the end of the day, whoever you consult, whether you're consulting your friends, whether you're consulting your family members, whether you're consulting a respected member of society or a lawyer, you would be helped, or they would aid you to identify the land which you seek to purchase or the land which you seek to acquire, right? Now, after identification of the land, the next thing you would be doing is you would be looking for who owns the land. So if you see, for example, a parcel of land, which you think this spot would be good for setting up a restaurant or setting up putting up a residential building or putting up a commercial building. You want to build a warehouse over here. You've seen the land, you think is a viable spot for that. You have identified the land. The next thing to do is you would identify the owner of the land. You would generally make inquiries. Now in Ghana, lands are usually held by either families, individuals, primarily. Families, individuals own lands in Ghana. So you'd be looking for which family or which stool owns the land. When you find that out, you would go and have a meeting with the owner of the land, okay? You'd go have a meeting with the owner of the land. Now, this meeting is, please, can we stay on the informal approach, because we're still on the informal approach. So when you would go have a meeting with the owner of the land, and at this meeting, you would agree on things such as the price of the land. You would agree on things such as the state of the land and how when transfer will take place and other kind of things, the mode of payment. Once this is done, once all these are agreed on, once the oral agreement is concluded, then you would have the conveyance drafted, okay? You would have the conveyance drafted, and then the interest is transferred. You would observe that in the informal approach, it is usually, because it reflects the traditional system of land acquisition in Ghana, there's very little paperwork, okay? And it is usually done out of, the informal approach is usually used because of reasons of trust and respect. So you are going to the head of a community, right? The head of a township, the head of a kingdom, to request to purchase land from that person or to acquire land from that person. In this context, you believe that the person is a person who is respected in society and will not act fraudulently. So you would believe that, one, he is the land to which he would give you, he has the capacity to give to you. That is, he himself is in a position of power to give you the land. And secondly, that the land is owned by him or by someone for whom he has power to act on his behalf. So the land could be owned by a stool or a group, but he represents the stool, or he represents the community, or he represents the group, and he could actually act on behalf of the group, okay? So when he's giving you the land, you know that the acquisition or your acquisition is valid. So it is based over here, there's a lot of trust. Unfortunately, human beings are being human beings. We are inherently British. So trusting a human being is bad. And there could be issues of fraud. There could be issues of double sale. So you came seeking to buy a land. The land you are given was already sold to somebody last year or 2 years ago. The person has not developed the land, but he bought the land, he paid the purchase price, and the land is that person's land. Because you have come to them, there was no prior paperwork, and so they repeat the process for the same piece of land with you. What would happen now is that two persons would have bought the same piece of land. And these are some of the problems with the informal approach. Now, to cure this, or to cure some of the problems, especially the problem with the double sale, and to ensure that the person to whom you are taking the land from, or the person who seeks to transfer the interest in the land to you, actually owns the land or has an interest to transfer in the land, we require the person to produce what we would call an abstract of title. Basically, this is a document or set of documents which would trace how the person acquired acquired the land. So if I acquired land from my father, who acquired land from his mother, who acquired land from her grandmother, in my abstract of title, we would note all these things down. So I would say that I acquired the land, this piece of land, in the year 2020 from my father. My father acquired the land in the year 2000 from his mother. His mother acquired the land in the year 1957 from whoever, right? Now, don't forget that we say that in proving good title, we used a 30-year statutory period. So if my abstract of title is able to trace ownership of the land or significant events affecting the land for the past 30 years, then we will say that that is a good abstract of title from which good title could be obtained. Okay, so you can obtain good title where there's a good abstract of title, right? So, like I was saying, to cure the problems with the informal system, you could request for an abstract of title. You study your abstract of title. Once you are satisfied, the agreement is concluded, and then you enter into the conveyance, right? The conveyance is the deed, maybe the lease or whatever deed, which would transfer interest to you. Okay, that is for the informal approach. Now, let's move on to the formal approach. The formal approach is the modern approach, and it is the approach we will use when you come to invest with MoreCribs, okay? So if you want to acquire property with MoreCribs, this is what you should be expecting. This is the approach which will be used, the formal approach. And this is what we will first do for you. So at the very first stage, once you consult or you tell us you are interested in acquiring property, we will identify the property for you or the land for you. And then we will identify, but you would have, first of all, you'd have to disclose the purpose for which you seek to acquire the land. What do you want to invest in? Because we later on come to find out that there would be, because of town and country planning, for planning reasons, it is not every piece of land which can be used for anything at all. So if an area has been set out for commercial purposes, say for the construction of a market, you cannot acquire it seeking to build a house. Or sometimes the town is planned in such a way that the parcel you want or the piece of land you seek to acquire is in the road, right? So all these so we have to ask you, you have to inform us of what exactly you want to acquire the land for, the purpose of acquisition. Now, once that is done, we will make initial contact with the owners. We would identify the land, and then you'd make initial contact with the owners. And then at this stage, we will carry out the first inquiries and searches, okay? So the initial inquiries and searches are carried out. Now, what happens here is that we would be seeking to ascertain, number one, whether a person who is holding himself out as the owner of the land is actually the owner of the land. Because don't forget, we said that you cannot give that which you do not have. So if you do not have ownership in the land, you cannot confer another person with ownership in the land. Okay, if you don't own the land, you cannot give out the land. So we'll be looking to ensure that the person who owns the land is actually the person who you are coming to deal with. When we're doing this, we would also check for the identity of the owner, because you come to find out that, especially in Ghana, people could have very strikingly similar names, okay? So you could have a name like Ni Okai Okai and Ni Okai Okainja. those are two completely different names, two completely different persons, but they are probably siblings, okay? They are siblings. And the person who has the title to the land is actually Ni Okai Okai, okay? So Ni Okai Okai, right? And his brother is Ni Okai Okanja. But everybody calls both of them Ni Okai, okay? So when you are looking for the owner of the land, they would say Ni Okai. And now the true owner, who is Ni Okai Okai, is not around, but his brother, Ni Okai Okanja, who is also called Ni Okai, is around and would come and he would represent himself to you as the owner of the land because he is Ni Okai. And because it is in fact his brother's land, he would be acting as though he's acting on the authority of his brother. Meanwhile, his brother has absolutely no knowledge of what is going on, right? So in such a case, you would deal with him, and at the end of the day, you realize that you dealt with someone who has absolutely no interest in the land. So to identify the owner, we would also be looking at ID. So you would request for an ID to confirm the identity of the seller, right? To confirm the identity of the seller. Then we will carry out searches at the Lands Commission, okay? We'll carry out searches at the Lands Commission. Now, what's the good thing, can we stay on the previous slide? The good thing now is that our new Lands Act, that's the Lands Act of 2020, Act 1036, requires registration, okay? So for every transaction on any piece of land or any parcel of land, you have to go to the Lands Commission and register so that there's a register of land. All dealings with the lands are recorded. Now, the records are kept by the Lands Commission of Ghana, okay? So you could easily conduct a search at the registry of the Lands Commission to ensure that you will get, or to ensure that the person holding himself out as the owner actually owns the land and all of that, okay? So this is all at the initial stages of the formal approach. Now, the next thing we will do is we will enter into a contract, okay? You'd enter into a contract. Now, this is a contract for sale, okay? This would be generally a contract for sale or a contract for the leasing of the property. The main reason why we do this is because, you see, sometimes the enquiries or ascertaining the true ownership of land may delay, okay? You could issue out a search request at the office of or at land registry or a lands commission, and it will take a while before the request or before the results are prepared. During this period, a seller might be inclined to sell the land to another person, because especially in cases where he wants to get rid of the land, he needs money urgently for something. You want the land, he also wants money, but because you want to make sure that you get the land without any defect in title, you are going to be taking various steps to ascertain the authenticity of the seller or the owner and to ensure that basically you acquire good title. And that may take a while. Between the period you are waiting or the period of conducting searches and inquiries, the seller may meet another person who is willing to forgo the search and inquiry and pay cash instantly for the land, okay? So to prevent a situation where we have identified the land, we have started our inquiries, made investments, we want to pay various fees at Lands Commission with regards to searches, we have undertaken various inquiries and whatnot. And then in the middle of this, the seller would go and sell to another person. To prevent this, we would enter into a contract with the seller. Okay, the contract is basically to guarantee that our transaction will take place. Okay, and don't forget, at this point, the true transaction, we said that land acquisition is done by conveyance, so the true transaction will be the conveyance, but the contract at this stage is to bind the seller. Okay, you would bind the seller so that the seller would now be under legal obligation to carry out the transaction, that is the conveyance. Okay, so we will enter into a contract. Now, once we've entered into the contract, we will continue with our searches. We would we'll get a surveyor. A surveyor would go map out the land, draw a site plan. This site plan is actually what would be used as the basis for a search at Lands Commission. We would make other relevant searches. You search at the various municipal assemblies because of the town and country planning issues, just to be able to make sure that the land you are acquiring is land which you can actually use for the purpose for which you are acquiring. There's also a collateral registry at the Bank of Ghana, right? So if the land you are acquiring has been used as collateral to facilitate or a loan or something, or some other financial transaction, so you would have to make all those checks and all those searches to ensure that the land you are buying would be free from any encumbrance. Okay, or during this period too, you would also request from the owner or the seller his documents. Okay, so you would examine his documents, and at this time, I should probably be saying we, because the individual would rest. All you'd have to do is you pay MoreCribs or you pay your lawyer very affordable fees, and then we'll do all this work for you. Okay, so we would evaluate the documents, we would examine the documents to make sure that there is no defects in the documents. And it's interesting because sometimes it may arise that the owner or the person seeking to sell the land is unaware that the title he is purporting to give is actually defective. So he got the land 12 years ago, and the person from whom he got the land was actually not the owner of the land, but he didn't know. And he has held the land without any questions, without anybody coming to disturb him. He has been in peaceful and undisturbed possession or occupation of the land, right? Now he wants to transfer the land to you. It is in your examination of the document that you realize that, in fact, there is a gap or there's a defect in his documents. The person who first sold him the land defrauded him. So the evaluation of documents is very, very important. And I would repeat over here that the evaluation of documents is not for the individual to do, because we have special training. We have particular things we are going to look out for in examining these documents to make sure that what you acquire is in fact good title. Okay, so this is after we have already signed the contract. At this point, we have signed the contract, and so we keep looking, we keep going, relevant searches. If you see anything, you have any relevant questions, that is, if your lawyer or MoreCribs through the lawyer or attorney has any relevant questions, we would inquire, we make inquiries, we contact the seller, we contact the seller's lawyer, we would ask relevant questions, just in a bit to ascertain the authenticity and how good the title of the seller is. Okay, then once that is done, we will look, and once that is done and we are satisfied, right? Once that is done and we are satisfied, the next thing we will do is we will have the conveyance drafted. Okay, we would have the conveyance drafted. Now, the conveyance is that document which will transfer legal title to you. Okay, the conveyance is that document which will transfer legal title to you. It is what will make you now the owner of the land. That is what will make you the owner of the land. Once the conveyance is done, then we would say that the transaction has been near completed, okay? The final steps will be to ensure that the conveyance is stamped, okay? So there's the oath of proof and the certificate of proof, which are attached to the conveyance, which would have to be stamped before they would have to be stamped before the registrar of lands or before the registrar of the lands division of the high courts. Okay, before the registrar of lands and before the registrar of, or before the registrar of the lands division of the high courts. After which you would be required to pay stamp duty fees. Okay, so this is done at the Lands Commission. The Lands Commission would value the Lands Commission will value the land. The stamp duty is usually about, I think, somewhere between 0.5 to 1% of the value of the land. And then there's registration with the Lands Commission. So now you register your new title with the Lands Commission. And then we would say that the transaction has been completed. Okay, the transaction would have been completed at this point. The most important thing we said is ensuring that the person from whom you are acquiring the land from has good title to give. He is actually the owner of the land. Okay, now, yeah, he's actually the owner of the land. And also ensuring that he has not previously made any transfer of his interest or his ownership to another person. So at MoreCribs, what we will do for you is we would ensure that you get good title land. We would ensure that you do not become a statistic in our next presentation on land and land disputes, but your acquisition of land will become a success story, right? I saw a couple of questions pop up in the chat, so lady, if you could read them out for us. You are not audible.
So, Adaare, we'll go into the questions in a few. Right now,
Okay.
I'm going to take a short break and watch a few videos on our sponsors.
All right.
Thank you so much, Emmanuel Adaare, for your very insightful and informative session. And I hope everybody would understand what it takes and how intensive it is to acquire land. But here at MoreCribs, we are going to help you make it easy. Just sleep and contact Adaare and I. Thank you.
My name is Felicia Adu. Welcome to our new sales office. At Tresaco, we are renowned for modern designs, exceptional quality, and providing long-term value for our buyers. Come with me as I show you the exciting plans we have for our new project, Akaya. Akaya is a new exclusive master plan community for Tresaco, with phase 1 now open, offering 2-bedroom apartments as well as 3 and 4-bedroom townhomes with elegant architecture, modern interiors coupled with functional layouts to create an inspiring yet comfortable living environment for discerning residents. A wholesome neighborhood estate with recreational and social facilities to match any gated community in Accra. At the heart of the development is the clubhouse with board and meeting rooms, event spaces, private theater, a fully fitted gym, as well as the paddle tennis, a multi-sport complex, outdoor swimming pool, children's play area, and a landscape central park. Developed by Tresaco, a real estate partner you can trust. With pricing from $155,000, call me today to make an appointment to visit our sales office.
Hello. So that was Akara Properties at Trasaco. If you're interested, the information was on the screen. Hope you people were able to take a screenshot. If not, in our link tree, most of the information would be there. So now over to Chrissy to introduce our next speaker.
Yes, thank you so much. And I just want to spotlight our sponsors. Without our sponsors, this would not be available. This would not be even possible. So Aquia Properties, I know Miss Natasha, she is on. Thank you so much for joining us. We have Regis Office Spaces who have partnered with us as well. Takoradi Technical University, they have partnered with Building in Ghana also. And we are so elated to have them on board. If you would like to partner with us, please, please, please click on the Linktree link. We would love to partner with you. We would love to meet with you, and we would love to have you on board Building in Ghana as well. So like we were saying at the beginning of the event, this is our very first event. This is our very first seminar. We're doing it virtually, but we will be coming in person in Ghana next year, January 2025, where we'll also be doing the land tour as well. So some super, super, super exciting things are happening here in the land of MoreCribs. We're excited to aid you in your construction work, in your construction process of building your homes and your commercial properties as well. But we want to collaborate, we want to partner with you. We want you to come along and be a part of this mission as we do highlight real estate opportunities for the diaspora and abroad in the beloved land of Ghana. So absolutely partner with us. You can also follow any of our speakers. So that will also be included in the link tree as well. Makita Smith Global is also, she's also dropped her social media handle in the chat. Also, feel free at any given point, if you have a question, if you have a pounding question that you're like, oh my God, I just cannot wait to answer this, please drop it in the chat for us so that we can highlight your question and get your question answered. Also, towards the very end of this program, we will have a live panel discussion with all of our speakers. They would love to expand on any question that you could potentially have. So again, thank you all so much for joining, and we're just going to continue. We're going to continue on, and we hope that you all are getting some valuable information from this seminar. I know I am. I'm learning a lot, and at the end of the day, education, knowledge is powerful, and I'm super excited to see what all of us are going to do with this education afterwards. So we will continue along with Building in Ghana. Hope you all are doing well. So if you have recently chimed in, we also want to highlight where you are from as well. So if you want to drop in the chat where you're from, we'd love to rep your city, your state, your country, and things of that nature. So we do want to open up the floor. If anyone has any additional questions for Emmanuel, certainly let us know. He's here live and in color. He's ready to answer your questions. I'm so glad that you brought that out, Emmanuel, as far as the formal process of acquiring land and then the informal process, because there's always, you know, a contrast to anything. So thank you for bringing that out. That was very informative. I myself enjoyed that. So if we have any other questions. Okay, so we have one. So Russell says the process is described by Emmanuel indicates that it takes a long time for a person interested in acquiring land to finally acquire good title. Is there anything in particular that MoreCribs can do to expedite the process?
Right. So the truth is that maybe I exaggerated a little on how long it will take, right? Maybe, just maybe, but it could take you a couple of months. It could take you a couple of months to perfect the transaction. But the truth is that it is worth it, okay? There is so much land fraud in Ghana. You are always better off waiting out to ensure that you get good title. As for the acquisition, honestly, you could acquire land same day. Okay, you could buy land same day. It is possible to buy land same day. But as to the titles you will get, therein lies the problem. It's possible to acquire land within a week. But more importantly, What we do, or what we can do for you, is that we have various contact persons we can contact at Lands Commission and other relevant agencies and authorities, so that when you seek to buy land or when you seek to acquire land, we will liaise directly with our contacts to be able to get informal search results even prior to the search results coming. So at various points, wherever you have to go to an agency, because of bureaucratic processes and for many other reasons, there may be a slight delay, okay? So it could take about, say, a week or 2, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, a month to get a search result. But we could get an informal result for you, say within a day or 2 or within 3 days, so that you could proceed. We would proceed for you almost as though we are not, we'd proceed for you almost as though we have the actual reports. But more importantly, and this is why we enter into the contract, okay? We enter into the contract so that once we enter into the contract, the seller is bound by the terms of the contract. So if we entered into the contract and we signed a contract that you will transfer the interest you have in the land to me, because of the contract, and the terms of the contract would be drafted, bearing in mind that we need reasonable time to conduct searches, okay? Bearing in mind that we need reasonable time to conduct searches. So if we anticipate that we need about 2 months to be able to satisfy ourselves that the seller indeed has good title, we would put it in the contract that we would need reasonable time of approximately 2 months. I mean, we would use more specific language in the contract, but we would make it known that we need this amount of time to be able to satisfy ourselves that the title which we will be acquiring under this transaction is valid. And I say this, and I would say it's very carefully, like with full force, right? That please do not compromise on the checks. Do not compromise on the inquiries. Do not compromise on the searches. We know you need to get the transaction done as quickly as possible. We are working to get a transaction done as quickly as possible, but you have to go through the process to acquire good title. Failure to go through the process, you'd be the principle now is buyer beware, right? So you ought to beware, you ought to be on guard. Make sure that everything checks out, make sure you are satisfied. If not, you are going to make a down payment, 500,000 cedis or $1 million, regardless of where you're buying the land, depending on where you're acquiring the land, the location. And then you would have a case where you would get the land. After acquiring the land, after paying for the purchase price of the land, you are going to spend as long as 14 years in courts, right? 14 years in court. Throughout those 14 years, you'll be paying attorney fees, you'll be paying filing fees and many other fees during the pendency of the court case. And then at the end of the 14 years, you may lose the land completely. So we always advise that just wait it out. This is one of those instances where it is like a mother in labor. You cannot rush. The child will come out at the appointed hour. You just relax, be patient, and trust the process, right?
Thank you for that. That was very, very good. Thank you. So we do have some other questions here as well. So would you be able to give approximate timelines on the process? How long could it take to verify?
Sorry, I cannot get the I didn't get the question. I didn't hear you. The network was bad.
Okay. Is that better? Would you be able to give approximate timelines on the process? How long could it take to verify ownership?
How long it takes to
verify ownership?
I really cannot hear you, but I think you're asking with regard to timelines. Yeah. That's okay, right? So, like I said, we could get unofficial results within 2 days, okay? Within 2 to 3 days, we could get unofficial results. But the actual verification, let's say about 3 weeks, we could use about 3 weeks, but it is largely dependent because there are times when you'd be informed that there's a backlog, and so it could stretch for up to 6 to 7 weeks. Okay, you're trying to conduct the search, and it could simply take a long time. There are multiple factors, because also it is now that the land registry has been digitized, but previously it was handwritten. So they have to go to the records room. And so even as of today, if you are looking for you're looking for records for some of the lands, they'll tell you they have to check sometimes records are moved from the record room to archives, so they now have to go. It's a long process. So depending on when the land was first registered, and two, the staff or manpower at Lands Commission at the time, and three, the general burden or backlog on the Lands Commission at the time, it could take you approximately between 3 to 8 weeks, let's say 3 to 8 weeks. In extreme cases, honestly, maybe 12 weeks, 9 to 12 weeks in extreme cases. But like I said, for the informal searches, if once our contacts are able to retrieve the records with the Lands Commissions quickly, you could get that done in about 2 to 3 days. In about 2 to 3 days, you could get your informal results.
Okay, so about 2 to 3 days. Okay, nice. Thank you. We do have a lot of questions here, so okay. So there's one more. What do you say to foreigners who don't understand the leasehold process? They always want to know what happens when the leasehold expires. How should they plan?
Right. So when we talk about a leasehold, we are basically saying that you will hold the land and interest in the land for a definite period. Usually in Ghana for foreigners is 49-year or 50-year period. Usually somewhere between 40 to 50-year period, right? At the expiration of the 50-year period, what usually happens is that there's an option to renew the lease, okay? There's an option to renew the lease, so that at the expiration of the period, you would renew the lease. So that is not too problematic. It's basically like you can assume the leasehold to be a long rent, okay? A pretty long rent. And then at the end of the period, you would, just like how you can renew your rent at the end of the period, your rent agreement at the end of the period, you can renew the lease at the end of the period, right? So it's the position of law in Ghana is that foreigners are not allowed to hold a freehold interest in land. So you cannot be given land for eternity or for an undetermined period, right? But we can give you the land, you can acquire the land, and then you would periodically review whenever the period is up, your period for acquisition is up, or the period of the lease is up, then you would renew the period, you renew the lease.
Okay, good. So there are options around
Yes,
that as far as,
yes.
Okay, good. Good, thank you for that. Let's check the chat. Let's see if we have any more questions. Any more questions? Okay, I think that might be it. Okay, so Joel had a question. He said, can you find lost land? He said, I've lost the papers for the land.
Ooh. The question is quite contradictory. Have you lost the land, or you lost the papers for the land? If it is the papers for the land you have lost, and you if you've lost the papers for the land, but you would be able to locate the land, you know where the land is, we could definitely help you with that. We could definitely help you with that. If you're unable to locate the land, we could still help you, but it would be quite a tedious process, but we could still help you. But the good thing is, if you're talking about papers, then it means the land is probably registered. So it might take a while, but we should be able to track down the land
Got it. Okay. Yeah, he did say that he lost the papers. Okay.
Yeah.
But there's ways, Joelle. There's ways. Okay, perfect. Any other questions? Greetings, Bernice. Thank you for joining in. Hello, everybody. Welcome in. Any other questions for Emmanuel? Okay. All right. Thank you so much, Emmanuel. That was very good, very informative. Okay, I think we have. Who is in charge for the renewal of the land lease for foreigners, and how is the pricing done? What criteria follow?
So honestly, for a foreigner, whoever would be in charge, you would be in charge of it yourself, right? So once you acquire, if you acquire through, for example, if you acquire through an agency like MoreCribs, when your lease is up or just before your lease will be up, we will remind you that your lease will be up soon, and we will begin the process of negotiating the price for the renewal. Now, the price of the renewal is negotiated between the landowner and then the leaseholder, right? So it's undetermined, it's not fixed, it is negotiated. So they will determine after a series of meetings, a price will be agreed upon, and then the lease could be renewed.
Good deal. I like how there's solutions. There's solutions to any challenge that they be facing. So
yes,
that's what I'm getting out of all of this. So I know that these are opportunities and challenges that the diaspora and Ghanaians could potentially be facing, but it's perception and everything. Go into it with a positive outlook and know that there's always a solution. So thank you for that.
Exactly. But let me just add, the solutions are not always so easy, but there's definitely a solution. There's always definitely a solution.
Right. It's worth going through the process for, right?
Exactly.
Thank you so much.
All right.
And again, let's highlight, since we do have a space and time here, let's highlight our sponsors. So we do have Aquia Properties, we do have Regis, we have Takoradi Technical University. We are so grateful for you all for partnering with us here at MoreCribs to bring about Building in Ghana 2024. Like we were saying, we'll have Building in Ghana 5, and that will be our in-person seminar, and then that will also be our land tour. So if you want to connect with us, which I would love for you to connect with us, definitely click the link tree here over in the chat, and you can also follow any of us in the MoreCribs team through any of our links. So Joy, you can go ahead.
At MoreCribs, we're not just building homes, we're shaping dreams into reality.
Hello everyone, I'm here today with the incredible team at MoreCribs, where we've been turning visions into stunning modern homes.
MoreCribs is dedicated to delivering high quality homes tailored for our clients' needs, from $30,000 and using sustainable materials and innovative designs. Our professionals are able to take care of your projects whilst you focus on other important issues.
You can build your dream home with us one brick at a time. And our team will ensure your vision and aspirations are brought to life without stress.
Welcome to MoreCribs construction site. Here is a 4-bedroom house. From foundation to finishing, we make sure everything is perfect. It's all about passion and precision.
Build it in Ghana with MoreCribs. Remy funds via Pay Angel. Follow us on our website and socials.